Hi, so today we'll be talking about nonverbal communication, power of silence. But before we move into the message or meaning of nonverbal communication, we need to understand or have some ground information about verbal communication. So what is verbal communication? Obviously, it's what we speak and the words we exchange with each other to understand each other the different meanings of whatever we are communicating. So when we move on to non-verbal communication, we'll be talking about the process of communicating without sending across any words. Sometimes understanding or sending a message or receiving a message without any spoken words. So when we understand about verbal and non-verbal communication, we need to understand that they are interconnected, they are linked, and only when they are linked you can have a successful communication, and when they operate together you can understand that the other person whom you are communicating with has received the message. So let's move on to the non-verbal communication. But before we do that, how do we communicate in a non-verbal manner? With verbal, we use words, we use sentences, we use any form of essays. But with non-verbal, we have different forms. We have body expressions, facial expressions, gestures, hand language, body movement, and even eye contact. So all of this forms together non-verbal communication. So let me move on to what is non-verbal communication. So non-verbal communication is an interaction. Interaction you have with the other person, the person who is opposite you. Now when we speak about non-verbal communication, we speak about, like I mentioned before, the gestures, the body language, posture, facial expressions. The type of clothing that you wear also makes a difference when you are communicating with someone, and time management. Now, when we speak about non-verbal communication, it is a form of interaction, and these cues, these body languages, these different forms of communicating encompass a wide range of elements. Facial expression, vocal tone, body language are all called as the silent language. Now why is it called the silent language? Because you don't need to use the power of words but the power of silence. Just imagine a scenario. You have a teacher walking into a classroom and all of you are making noise. So what happens there? The teacher may shout, the teacher may yell and ask you all, please keep quiet, please maintain silence, please sit in your chairs, right? But her voice may be died down or may drown down because of the noise that the class is making. So the power of silence here is much more effective than the power of words. And not only the power of silence, but the body language that comes with the power of silence. Maybe a stern look, maybe a cross arm, anything that can pass on a message that this is not approved by the teacher. So all of this together show there is a form of interaction between the teacher and the students, and they have understood the message that is clearly being expressed without the power of words. So power of silence. Through non-verbal communication, power of silence helps create an image towards others that we are communicating with through the cues, and we are able to express our emotions and feelings which may fail with words. So usually what happens when we are angry or when we are sad, we are unable to express what we are feeling deep down, or even when we are happy and excited. But that doesn't mean when you're happy and excited you remain silent. You will be expressing your emotions through your body language, through your gestures, through the eye contact that you're having. Eyes also speak a lot. So there's a saying, right? Beauty holds in the eyes of a beholder. Similarly, eyes are a diary into a person's heart. So whatever you think, whatever you feel are clearly reflected on your face as well. So the facial expression carry on the power of silence towards the other person, and they're able to understand what you want to express and what you want to mean. Transmission of messages or signals. Now, body, a physical body comprises of different features. Physical features, some which we are conscious about, some which we are unconscious about. The gestures, the signals that we create, the messages that we want to pass on, or the mediation of personal space. Now you all know what personal space is. Imagine there's this one person standing right next to you in a queue, and he's maybe or she or he are right pushing you through. Are you okay with that personal space being overtaken by someone else? No. So what happens then? Maybe you just turn around and give an angry glance and they get a message. You don't need to speak anything, but they get a message that you do not like anyone invading in your personal space. So there is a particular pattern of transmission of messages or signals that we communicate, and we make sure that the other person receives our nonverbal communication, that they are able to understand what we are trying to express. Now, wrong messages can be established if the body language doesn't match the verbal message. For example, I come in today and tell you, I have some good news to share. What do you understand by that? Is the good news actually a good news, or is it a forceful good news? The body language, the expression, the vocal tone doesn't match to the message that I have to share, right? So instead, I should be explaining or expressing in this manner, I have some good news to share. So that makes a difference. When your body language and your verbal message comes together, when they operate together, that's when you know that the message is effective. Otherwise, it's just a wrong message and it can be ineffective, or a person may lose contact or may not be able to follow what you are communicating with them. In verbal communication, though it is the most obvious approach that we all feel when we are communicating with each other, it can be misleading, because people can deceive, or people may not be able to explain in a manner that they understand. For example, you ask your friend to explain something about what the teacher mentioned or what was taught in class, and they are not able to explain what they have understood. They have understood in one particular manner and they are rephrasing it in that manner, but you are not getting the message. So with your body language of not being able to follow your friend's explanation, they get a message that, okay, so maybe they're not understanding what I'm saying. I should either rephrase my statements, or I should make a different explanation, or I should ask them to go to the teacher and get another explanation completely. So all of this makes an effective communication when our verbal and non-verbal communication comes in together. Now, non-verbal cues are authentic behavior, and that is not easy to lie or mislead or even fake feelings. Now, if I am feeling confused, I would be showing it in my face, but on my words, with my words, I might show I am very confident and I know what I'm speaking about. So that's what usually happens when you're in a viva, right? So maybe you have not prepared well, and you feel like, okay, if I go with a smile on my face and I pretend like I'm confident even though I do not know anything, that should help. But then when a question is asked and you're not able to answer, you start stammering, you start stuttering, and then what happens? It is clearly seen in your face that you do not know where this is going. You do not know where this answer is leading, or whether you are actually answering their question. So all of this, when you detail or you are conscious about your non-verbal or your body language and your verbal, you will understand that this is not in sync and I'm not able to make head and tail of this particular situation. So then you need to be able to understand that you may speak with your mouth, but what you communicate is with your body. You always speak with your mouth, you speak with your words, but when you're communicating with your eyes, you're communicating with your gestures, you're communicating with your body language. Now, if you come across a person whom you do not like, you may have cross arms, and you may feel, and the other person may feel or may get a message that, okay, so this person does not approve of me, or I am not approachable, or she or he is not approachable. But when you have open arms and when you have gestures going around, that's when you know that a person is comfortable, that's when you know the person loves to explain certain things, and so on and so forth. So your non-verbal cues speak a lot about you as a person and what you are trying to express. Now for the next, have you all heard about Mr. Bean? Now Mr. Bean, I'm sure if you all have not heard, I'm pretty sure that everyone has heard about him. He had a series and also an animated spin-off and movies where he did not utter a single word. He was able to communicate what he was going through in his daily life, the problems that he was going through without speaking a single word. And it was all through the emotions, all through the body language, all through the cues that controlled his body. So here's a small snippet of how Mr. Bean was able to communicate different feelings and express his emotions in a right manner. Now that you have watched Mr. Bean's video and how he was able to communicate through different emotions and express the different emotions he was going through, we move on to the meaning of nonverbal communication. So one is communicating without words. That has been clearly established right from the introduction. Non-spoken context is communicated and half of the message is understood or communicated through nonverbal communication. We always carry our messages, most of which with nonverbal communication. Especially we Indians, we love to use our eyes, our head, our hands, the different expressions that come about with these particular parts of our body, and the famous, the head bobble, right? So we can convey emotions, we can convey messages and create a connection between people only through non-verbal communication. Now in a verbal communication, over the phone, you may not be able to express what you actually feel, right? The words over the phone are always like, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. But how do you know he's actually sorry? He might be smiling behind the phone and you wouldn't know about it, right? Or I'm sorry that you failed your paper. He might be a competitor and he's probably happy that he won the first place, whatever it is. But when you meet a person face to face, that's when non-verbal communication comes into effect. Why? Because you are able to maintain eye contact with that person. You are able to see that the message or the words they are speaking is in sync with their non-verbal communication or the non-verbal cues. The hand gestures, the facial expressions, everything comes in sync when you are speaking something. A person can also notice that you are bored when they are speaking through the facial expressions. They might unconsciously yawn in front of you, look distracted, avoid eye contact. All of this can come into place if they are not conscious of how they are connecting with you in a non-verbal manner. Now most of the people use non-verbal communication to influence other people and create a particular atmosphere. Now here, the messages that transfer do not involve language. Like I already said, they can be intentional or unintentional. and most of it is 7% words, 38% is the voice modulation or pauses, 55% is the gestures and the facial expression. Now when we meet a person, we want to create a first impression. We want to be the best, especially in our interviews, when we're getting admission in another university or even a marriage proposal. We want to show that we are perfect, that we have good instincts, we have good communication skills, and that's how we portray ourselves. But as we get to know each other, we realize or we understand the body language first and then the verbal communication. So when we speak about body language, we speak about the hand gestures, the movement, the facial expression may not be in sync with the words that you want to communicate. Now first impression is a lasting impression. So when you want to create a first impression, you must make sure that what you are speaking is in sync with how you are expressing. Like I said, non-verbal communication can be more effective if verbal and non-verbal communication operate together, are in sync with each other, and connect the same meaning that you want to convey. This way, you are able to help a person create an imagination, create a story in their mind through the words that you are using, and along with the words, the different gestures. That's why you have theatre, that's why you have acting, that's why you have these movies come out, because they are able to get in sync the non-verbal and the verbal cues. The words that they are using along with their non-verbal cues, which come together and are able to pass on the message to the audience, to the community of what has been going through. Now, an individual can help you understand certain thing through the words that he is using and through any intentional or unintentional gestures that he is using. So what do you mean by this? When I say now, I want to share a story with you, or I want to tell you what happened today in the bus. There was this boy who came home one afternoon after school, and he ran to his grandmother huffing and puffing. And do you know, grandma, what happened today? And his grandmother was all intense and listening to him intently. What happened, son? And he said, I just got off the bus, and as I was getting off, there were other people along with me. And when we were all crossing the road, a vehicle passed by. And the grandma was like, oh my God, what happened then? Did anyone get hit? No, everybody went their own way. He was a notorious kid, but he knew how to use his non-verbal cues, his voice modulation, and his verbal communication, make the story so intense that his grandma really thought that someone was hit while they were crossing the road. So all this makes a difference when you know how to play around with the cues that you have. Now all of us are smart and all of us are unique, but the words that we use and the body language that we have control of, can help us play around, can help us enact certain scenes or role play certain scenes. So this way we are able to communicate with people in a more effective manner. Like I said, verbal and non-verbal, only when they are interconnected, will help in an effective communication. So here's a short video of a famous actor, Eddie Murphy, who's trying to communicate and tell a particular barista of what kind of coffee he wants, but he is unable to speak. So he is using his non-verbal cues. Look out and watch out how he is able to communicate without using words. So now we will talk about the importance of non-verbal communication. Now we have understood the meaning, the introduction, and what goes on in non-verbal communication. we need to understand why is nonverbal communication important. First thing is we interact with one another. Now when we interact with one another, words are not enough. When we speak about only words, we may only say good morning, good afternoon, how are you doing? And that is not a proper interaction. So when you need to have a proper interaction with someone, you communicate not only through words, you connect not only through words, but through your body language, through your expressions, through the gestures that you have. Only when you do this, you are able to communicate or connect with an audience or the other person. When we go for an interview, we want to create the first impression, right? But when we go there, we don't go there with all the superficial words that we have learned or we've read in our dictionary and we've come. But we need to understand that we need to connect with the interviewers as well. When we connect with the interviewers through a non-verbal way, then that is much more effective than in a verbal manner. Why do you think most of the applicants, when they take up interviews now in an online basis, tank their jobs or tank the results because they're not able to communicate or connect with them in an effective manner? It is because of the virtual meetings. You're unable to express, you're unable to show how you actually feel in a virtual meeting. So when you're able to actually do this, when you're in front of a person, that helps you connect with each other. Be it in an emotional manner, be it maybe when you're grieving, or be it when you're happy, anything you're able to connect because you're able to express both in words and in a non-verbal manner. Now, different parts of the world have different meanings for different kinds of non-verbal cues. For example, when we cross our fingers, we mean good luck. Or some other person may be like, okay, don't catch me. So every culture has different ways of communicating in a non-verbal manner, similarly to how we speak in different manner, how we speak in different dialects, how we speak in different languages, we are able to express ourselves in a different manner. Have you noticed, we as Indians do have different sets of languages, don't we? But when we speak in our own mother tongue, we're able to connect with each other much more faster than when we speak in a second or a third language. We're able to connect not only because of the mother tongue, but also of our body language. It speaks a lot. When we are able to connect with another person through maybe let's say Kannada or Hindi, Tamil, Malayalam, we're able to connect. Why do you think we see a lot of a particular region of people come together and they speak only their language? Because they're able to connect with each other. Not of only communication, but to connect. And they connect with their body language as well. They're able to express, they're able to put out their arms, they're able to show it through their eyes, through their facial expressions. And this helps in connecting with each other. Now here in Mangalore, when someone just nods their head, it can mean many things. Yes can mean a yes, no can mean a no. But in some other culture, a head bobbing may be completely different. We do not know the different ways that they will decipher the meaning of a non-verbal cue that has been showcased. So every culture has different ways of connecting through a non-verbal communication. Now Peter F. Drucker has mentioned in his quote, the most important thing in communication is to hear what isn't being said. And what do you mean by this? Do you mean by read between the lines? Maybe one, that is one point. Second thing is understanding each other through the silence. Now, most of the counselors in their sessions or in a therapy, they have this 5-10 minutes of silence. For the client, it can be an awkward silence if they feel awkward, or for someone else can be an effective or therapeutic silence. A silence can mean 1,000 things and more. When we are silent, it doesn't mean we don't have to share anything. It can mean multiple things. You're contemplating your thoughts, you're contemplating what to speak, or you're contemplating whether you want to keep quiet altogether. There are a lot of thoughts running in everyone's head at this moment. Even when you're listening to this recording, what's happening? You may have a billion things going on at the back of your mind, right? So when that happens, the person across you, even when you're speaking to them, they're able to understand what you are not saying through the nonverbal cues you are expressing. So every person has different ways of expressing themselves. And when they do this, what happens? They're able to connect with each other much more effectively than when they don't see each other often. Now, nonverbal communication conveys much more information and a deeper information and intimate knowledge about what you want to share. Verbal communication may have 1,000 things that you want to say, but a nonverbal communication has much more to give in. For example, if you go through the police or criminal behavior or criminologists, they will tell you that the words don't mean anything than what they are expressing themselves in their body or through their body. Now, why do you think they have an interrogation room with a one-sided window? The reason being, they want to observe how a person behaves under pressure, or they want to observe how a person is behaving when they lie about certain things. And lying comes naturally for every human being. And lying comes only through words, not through actions. This is why they say actions speak louder than words. So when we say this, it means that messages are conveyed much more effectively. Messages carry much more information than our verbal words or our verbal language. Now, when we speak about non-verbal communication, it is the primary source of communication. Babies, as they are born, they're unable to express themselves through words. So how do they pass on the message? Crying, being happy, or kicking their legs in the air, or biting themselves, biting someone else. All these are different ways of communicating their emotions, of communicating themselves. And this has not been taught. This is innate in every human being. So non-verbal communication is just innate. We don't need to be taught how to express ourselves. Like we have to learn how to use sentences, how to use certain words, how to pronounce them. All of this comes at a later stage. But the first thing is always the non-verbal cues. Even animals have a way of communicating with each other through non-verbal language or through non-verbal communication. Animals don't use words, and we all know that. They're unable to speak, but they still understand each other. Why? Through the non-verbal communication, through the gestures that they have. Maybe while wagging their tail, they show they are happy. Or if their tail is down, they show they are scared. These are the different forms of communication in an animal. So similarly, human beings also have different ways of communicating. Let's say you're in a room of meeting with your friends and with your bosses, and you have a friend with you and they're talking about, let's say, cutting down your salaries to 20%. And when that happens, you're unable to maintain eye contact with your boss, but you directly look at your friend during that point in time. And when you look at your friend, you're like, what's happening? You're not using your words, but you're using your facial expression to connect and communicate with each other in a room full of seniors or higher authorities. Now, communication is meta-communicative as well. It goes two ways and it doesn't have to be only one way. You understand each other much more better when you spend longer time with each other. And when this happens, you are able to connect because of the non-verbal cues. A lot of criminal behaviors or criminal investigators also work through non-verbal communication. The reason being, they're able to connect with each other only through non-verbal cues. Let's say, go back, even the army people, they usually say, okay, the air is clear or the room is clear, everything is good, we need to go back or we need to go forward, be safe. So everything has a different way of communicating with each other only through non-verbal communication. Body signals. Now, when one person is not comfortable with another, our body language speaks a lot. We may become closed, we may go far. Usually in an interview, you sit at the edge of your seat. You may not like the interviewer asking certain personal questions, so you may go back. You may lay back. All of this speaks of how you are comfortable or how you are as a person through your non-verbal communication. Body signals speak much more effectively than your words. And the second part in body signal is your personal space. Now, men and women have different ways of maintaining their personal space. Men or women, some of them do not like their personal space being invaded. So you have a proximal distance that you need to maintain with each other. Again, culture also makes a huge difference when it comes to personal space. There may be some cultures that don't believe in personal space, and there may be some that believe in a longer distance. So anything that comes in between, it can speak a lot about a person, or it can speak a lot to a person about how you connect with them through your nonverbal communication. Now, there is a particular way that a person needs to maintain their personal space. Now, personal space, usually close family people or someone we trust, are allowed in our personal space, right? But if I have a stranger invading my personal space, immediately I would have fear, I would be withdrawn, or I would draw back and just, run for my life. Everything comes with the personal space. Even people we meet at the park or at the supermarket or in a coffee shop, we do maintain a certain kind of personal space. And all of this speaks about a person's communication. So we need to understand what a personal space is and how we can maintain it with each other through the communication. When we speak about non-verbal communication as compared to verbal, non-verbal is much more believable, is much more reliable as compared to verbal communication. Why? Because like I said before, non-verbal communication cannot lie. Your gestures, your expressions, your eye contact, the way your eyes express themselves, your facial expressions, the way your body is carrying out the message, everything comes together and a person then can believe you what you are saying. But if it doesn't match, the person may not believe you. Why do you think teachers don't take in what the students, when the students lie about certain things? Because they know and they understand the body language of a person. You remember as a kid, maybe you wanted to miss an exam or a unit test, or you did not complete your homework. So in the morning you would get up with a severe stomach pain or so-called stomach pain and tell your parents, oh, I can't go to school today, my stomach is hurting. Now, if your body language and your words are connecting with each other, you actually feel it, then yes, you can fake it. But otherwise, your parents can see clearly through you that you are lying, and one is because you've not done your work. Similarly, criminal justice people as well go through this. They're able to understand a person whether they are lying or whether they are reliable through the non-verbal cues that they are expressing. Now, non-verbal cues also strengthen the first impression. First impression is not only about how you speak or how you carry forward your words or how you deliver your words. It's also about how you actually carry yourself with your body. Are you comfortable in your own skin? Are you comfortable in the clothes that you're wearing? Everything makes a difference when you are comfortable. If you are comfortable, that itself speaks a lot about you. It can tell that you're a confident person, it can tell that you're a prepared person, it can tell that you're dedicated and hardworking. Whereas if you are not comfortable in your own skin or the clothes that you wear, that speaks again more about you, but in a negative manner. It can tell that you're not confident, it can tell that you're unprepared, it can tell that you're lazy. If you sit back and lay back and tell, yeah, you can teach what you want or you can ask me any questions, if I feel like I'll answer them, that speaks a lot, right? You need to have a certain look, a certain eye contact if you want to create an effective first impression. Communication is omnipresent. Now, when I'm speaking about omnipresent, it is universal. Everybody understands non-verbal cues. If you're from America or if you're from India or Canada or Singapore, anywhere, non-verbal communication is omnipresent. Every person, even in different cultures, even though we may not understand certain things, there are certain emotions that a person is able to pick up even though they are not from the same country. Why? Because our non-verbal cues are universal. We're able to connect, we're able to understand each other because of these non-verbal cues. Non-verbal behavior is multifunctional. Now, when I'm talking about multifunctional, it doesn't mean that you can do two different tasks at the same time. But you can have different things. So I'm speaking right now, I'm using my verbal communication with you, but along with that I'm also using my hands, I'm using my facial expressions and my eyes. I'm able to express through my eyes. I'm able to express also through the voice modulation or the certain pauses that I'm able to give while I'm speaking. So non-verbal behavior doesn't mean you should be just standing straight and delivering a speech or talking to someone. That would put the other person completely to sleep. You need to showcase your verbal communication along with your non-verbal behavior to connect with the other person. If the opposite person doesn't feel connected with you, then you lose that person in an instant. Non-verbal behavior forms a universal language system as well. Similar to what I said when it is omnipresent, it is a universal language system. Everybody understands the different emotions: anger, fear, happiness, sadness, excitement, nervousness. Just like what you saw in Mr. Bean's video, you have different forms of emotions. And because of these emotions, you are able to express your behavior in that particular manner. So when this happens, you are able to connect with each other. I hope you have understood the first part of this session, that is the introduction, the meaning and the importance of non-verbal communication. Please look forward to the next segment. Thank you.